Booty cheeks, that is what the UN actually is.
If you ever feel useless, just remember that UN peacekeepers were in Bosnia. Is a joke often told in the Balkans.
And this is an expert that's clearly going to discuss exactly, well, how useless the UN actually is. Literally a self-described professional Balkaner.
Is a joke often told in the Balkans. The United Nations is an organization founded after World War II with the mission to prevent any future world wars.
It's funny because, you know, the UN on paper sounds like a fantastic idea, especially in the case of, like, I don't know, a Hollywood movie made about aliens. You would think that the UN would want to come together and organize exactly a plan to be able to discuss things with the UN, or the aliens, my bad, in the UN. But not, it doesn't always work out like that.
In theory, they're supposed to bring peace, justice, and a bright future to war-torn regions and countries. In practice, they're just there for PR points whenever the US wants to act as the world police but doesn't want accountability for their useless performative peace accords.
Damn, that's straight dagger to the heart right there as an American. That's crazy. Honestly, I'm not even gonna deny anything. That's as far as everything I know about the UN, that's exactly true. What's interesting is that the UN is here to kind of replace the League of Nations. Before that, it's just fascinating to see another kind of world organization fail, you know, in a way.
Throw in a condemnation being concerned.
UN is deeply concerned. Yeah, that is what the memes are all about. We cannot escape. I've covered so many of these memes, basically, that the UN is, you know, you'll see like a war-torn place, and the UN just is just like, thoughts and prayers.
And actively observing the situation, and you've got your $67 billion funding's worth.
That's so crazy. Yeah, that's always what they say. We are actively observing the situation. I'm sure you are. You're literally observing the entire world, UN. Thanks for that.
The UN at this point has turned into a glorified international change.org. You don't like that human rights are being abused and war crimes are being committed against minorities in a certain country? Ho, Buster, we've written up a strongly worded letter asking you to stop. What are you?
That is the most you're gonna get, honestly. You're gonna get a strongly worded letter, and it's gonna be maybe gonna have like 2 or 3 harsh words at max.
Gonna do now? No, wait, you can't use that as toilet paper. It's not environmentally friendly. Arrest warrants for
specifically talking about the Putin invasion of Ukraine. So yeah,
Netanyahu and Putin. Roll out the red carpet, boys. Famine in Gaza? Sorry, no clear evidence, chud. Food as a human right? America and Israel said no. Whoopsie.
Guess can't do anything. Oh, that's hilarious. Putting the clip of Trump working at McDonald's right after that.
Basically, anything the US votes against in UN resolutions, it's just not happening. Recognize Palestine as a state? Hell nah. Condemn Russia for the war they started in Ukraine? I mean, you already saw how Trump treated Putin. Although, it's kind of funny how Hungary often votes with America on these issues, even if they are in the overwhelming minority. Except food as a human.
There's a couple of countries that kind of always vote with the U.S. I guess Hungary, it's definitely Israel. There's like a random outlier in there for some reason. Usually like a random place in Africa, I feel.
Right, of course. One only needs to look at Hungarian cuisine and their obesity rate, but I digress.
Hungary is the this is the America of Europe. That's what I'm starting to come to the conclusion of.
Opposite is also true. If America were to unilaterally bomb a foreign country, they could do it without UN approval. Oh wait, they already did that once.
Oh man, this is gonna get spicy. We're getting spicy. Yeah, I feel like this was the moment. Well, I don't know. I feel like for my generation, this was the moment that everyone realized, oh, the UN is cheeks, it's ass. They're not going to do anything. The 1990s, obviously fall of Yugoslavia, Bosnia, things like that.
The Yugoslav war is how we Balkanoids were first introduced to UN peacekeepers.
Yeah, they call them the Blue Helmets. The Blue Helmets for a reason.
So some people will immediately dismiss what I'm about to say as biased and untrue simply because I've paraded myself as a Serb and people assume genocide is in my blood. But as my 23andMe test can attest, the only thing in my blood is the love for Allah and driving trucks to Germany. As such, I like to outline some...
Oh man, look at that classic Balkaner build right there. What an absolute unit.
Some of the missions is defining blunders, as well as shed a light upon the UN peacekeepers' skeletons in their closet.
Woo,
But first,
here we
what
go.
are the UN peacekeepers and what do they do? Nothing. Okay, but
They're sent to war-torn areas or conflict areas, and they're supposed to keep the peace on paper. But yeah, that doesn't always happen like that.
what are they supposed to do? Well, according to their principles and A4P agenda, their mission is to help countries and act impartially in the pursuit of lasting peace and stability, guaranteeing ceasefires against warring factions and protecting hundreds of thousands of civilians. Now,
I think it's like volunteers too. Like it's like just a couple of volunteers from all these different countries around the world supposedly, but I'm sure there's only it's coming from a lot more certain countries more than others. Basically, the actual helmets, boots on the ground, it's gonna come from certain countries more than others.
if you laughed, winced, cringed, or rolled your eyes after hearing this statement, don't worry. It's an expected reaction, since based on mountains of evidence, the UN has been quite dogshit at peacekeeping, especially in recent days. Why are they so bad? Well, that's cause complaints seem to fall on deaf.
I mean, it's funny because it's just like, I get it after World War II. It's like, oh, we can't do the League of Nations again. Let's try this like world organization once again to have the whole world, yada, yada, yada. The best thing that honestly came out of the UN, though, is this flag. Come on, we gotta admit, the flag is pretty lit. I love the icon. And that projection for the flat map, too, hell yeah.
Years. But who knows why the UN isn't willing to listen to the pleas of the international community? Maybe they're just that incompetent, or maybe they're wearing a pair of Raycons.
But again, it happened all the way back in 1945, and so we're 80 years after that. So I feel like it's just an organization where it's like, what do we do? What do we even do with this thing? Like, I guess we'll just try to keep the peace as best we can, but in reality, it's like, they're not gonna do nothing.
Right now, you might be thinking of various ongoing conflicts
transition.
like Ukraine versus Russia, the genocide in Gaza, or any obscure African civil war that's not seen and worthy enough. Perhaps the most
Especially right now. I mean, apparently Sudan is in chaos right now,
well-known and well-documented
which I'm sure they're monitoring that situation, yes.
failure of a UN peacekeeping mission came merely 20 years ago, during the Yugoslav wars. Essentially in 1995, the UN Protection Force was mandated to protect safe areas for civilians in Bosnia. However, all they could do was stand by as Bosnian Serb forces overran the town of Srebrenica and systematically executed over 8,000 Bosnian Muslim men and boys.
Yeah,
An
if you
atrocity-
haven't looked into the Yugoslavian wars, the Civil War, the Bosnian War, it got really messy. It's hard to even talk about here on YouTube. Like, I've tried to search like so many videos about it here on YouTube. It feels like a weird, dark chasm of like just highly, I don't know, filtered content that like barely dabbles in it. I mean, I guess that's kind of how the very controversial events in history goes. But, obviously Germany, World War II, it's hard to search for certain events that happened during that time. And I would definitely put this up there in terms of, it's just hard to find any sort of just real information.
that has since been recognized by many human rights organizations as a genocide. Which prompts the question, who's more likely to save a drowning Bosnian?
The Serb who pushed him or the UN? Yeah, this is how bad it got. Because the blue helmet guy probably just gonna stand there.
Serb who pushed him in, or the UN. But even before that, the UN proved its utter helplessness during the 1994 Rwandan genocide. A small UN force was on the ground with a mission to monitor a peace agreement, not to stop a massacre. Despite having clear warnings from its own force commander, the UN leadership in
Dude, the guy really have that hat? Was that just for the Hollywood movie, or did he actually have like the
Despite
the
having
afro?
clear warnings from its own force
The purple? I mean, I don't even know what it is. It looks artificial. I'm thinking, but is this really I don't know. I need to go back and I think this movie's called Hotel Rwanda, if I remember correctly.
Commander, the UN leadership in New York denied his requests for reinforcements and a stronger mandate. When the killings began, the Security Council's response was not to send help, but to withdraw most of its troops, leaving the remaining few hundred to watch helplessly as an estimated 800,000 people, mostly Tutsi, were slaughtered in a matter of months.
I mean, like I said, I don't know what you do with the UN at this point. Like I get the formation in 1945. You keep it together because it's like at least this symbol of world unity, but that's really all it is. I mean, it's not even really doing it like that anymore. I mean, I don't think anyone really believes too much that it's this symbol of world unity or the fact that we can all come together in diplomacy, but do you just scrap it? I'm sure there's a lot of people that say, yeah, just scrap it at this point, but I mean, shouldn't there be a way for the UN to come together? I don't know. Maybe they should just scrap the blue helmets at this point because they've just taken a lot of PR hits, to say the least,
by the Hutu extremists. And this cycle of a lack of resolve seems to continue, with the UN's recent mission in Mali ending in a humiliating withdrawal and its long-running operation in the Democratic Republic of the Congo facing accusations.
Bro's about to get slapped. That's crazy. Dang, he's trying his best to not slap him back. Look at that face. That's a lot of patience right there.
Of ineffectiveness and failure to protect civilians, as was the case in many other conflicts the UN intervened in. But we gotta give credit where credit is due, because the UN as a concept has a noble goal. And
that's crazy. Yeah, they're from Mongolia.
And in some cases, they succeeded. For instance, take a look at Namibia, whose transition to independence from apartheid South Africa was successfully overseen by the UNTAG. In fact, UN peacekeepers have, at the very least, managed to end bloodshed and stop civil wars across the world, like in El Salvador, Mozambique, and Sierra Leone.
Those are interesting examples. Yeah, El Salvador really sticks out at me because El Salvador is such a popular country right now, at least in North America. Bukele, the current leader of El Salvador, so many times, just has such a huge profile. Basically, I literally saw an article where they described him as the world's coolest dictator. But he's oftentimes going on newscasts and talks about, he has a ton of money in Bitcoin randomly, but yeah.
However, that's where the problems lie.
Are you sure?
As most of the quote-unquote successes of the UN peacekeeping missions fall under a weird gray area. Most of them are actually just short-term ceasefires that leave the affected areas in a perpetual stalemate and ignore or fail to address the underlying conflicts that caused the violence in the first place. Cyprus is probably the best example of this limbo status following UN intervention.
Yeah, you got the Turkish people from Cyprus up here in the north, or northern Cyprus, versus, Greek Cyprus, what we know as Cyprus, and then apparently the UK is there monitoring the situation as well.
Sure, the Turkish invasion was ground to a halt and peacekeepers have maintained a buffer zone since 1964, but nobody expected it to last this long. Even today,
countries split apart in half. I mean, we've been doing it all after World War II. We're still doing it. Cyprus, I feel like we don't talk about that often. We often talk about the Korean Peninsula. Obviously, West and East Germany was split in half for a while there. We've been talking a lot about Sudan. Sudan is South Sudan and Sudan.
Cyprus is left in a weird limbo state, literally split in half, with an ethnic conflict that's been frozen but unresolved for 6 decades and counting.
Random, don't even know why I'm talking about this, but apparently there are more cats on the island of Cyprus than people on Cyprus. And something like, I think the people are outnumbered like 4-1 or something crazy like that.
Or for instance, look at Kosovo. You knew I was gonna talk about it eventually.
Oh, no.
But to keep this can of worms closed, while UN intervention managed to end armed conflicts in the region, there is no concrete resolution over Kosovo's administrative status.
I mean, it's very complicated. Love the fact that, I don't know if I want to say I love the fact, but I always have found it funny that Spain does not recognize Kosovo, and that's just because it would get really awkward for them if they did.
Even amongst UN member states.
I mean, that's how it goes for a lot of the countries that you would think would all vote unanimously. Spain, maybe parts of, Mexico, Argentina, Chile. You would think maybe there, or the Philippines even.
Or the comment section.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm sure these comments come to his channel like literally on a daily basis, not even hourly.
Resolution 1244? Well, the Kosovars said they are independent, so I guess we'll recognize them. Honey, I think we ran out of toilet paper again. Thanks, babe. So, as you can see, the UN Peacekeepers' track record is not so effective, to
The greatest failure of the UN in our lifetime. Holy, who said that?
say the least. With some successful missions, plenty of colossal failures, and mostly short-term ceasefires that don't fix the root of the problem.
I mean, is it worth keeping, though, if it just, like, okay, the failures, yeah. There's been a lot of failures. Epic failures, in fact, but is it not worth keeping just for the small dubs they've gotten? Because when they get a small dub, it's like, well, I mean, at least they're there to get a small. I mean, if they weren't there, then there would be nothing but failures in a way, right? I don't know. I really don't know.
I'm just saying, if your success rate as a worldwide peacekeeping organization is comparable to my win rate in League of Legends, then you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, even if they have a success rate of 5%, well, I mean, one way to look at it is like, hey, that's 5%. That's 5% that we would not have had if the UN didn't exist. Now, you could maybe reform the UN or try to form something better than the UN so you can get a better ratio than 5%. That's something worth talking about.
But why is that? Why are UN peacekeepers as inefficient as they seem? Well, with so many cases on their hands, each of them have different causes for their failures. Let's go back to the Rwandan genocide, an atrocity which, by all accounts, could have and should have been averted by the UN peacekeepers. After the signing of the Arusha Accords, meant to facilitate Rwanda's transition after their previous civil war, the UNAMIR was established by the UN to assist in this transition, and do nothing else.
That's crazy. That is probably the best way to display the UN. This is fine.
Even when they had received proof of the Hutu extremists' plan to genocide the Tutsis, the UNMIR was flat out denied by the UN to raid their weapon caches or get involved in the ensuing conflict. But
this is really random, but this is reminding me of this specific conflict. I believe it's about this specific conflict. There was this really popular 4chan post where it's like a Scottish dude or insert some other random, like, super white European country. And he was writing the post on this 4chan post, and he's referring to his dad. And he just talks about, like, he doesn't understand why his dad is such a huge advocate that I believe this Rwanda conflict that was caused by the other side, and the world got it wrong, and something about his dad was like huge into this, and the guy just could not figure out why. Like, why did his dad became so obsessed with this specific topic? I believe this was about the Rwanda conflict, but I'm not 100%. But anyways, I'm just reminded of that moment right now.
What's worse than being ordered to sit powerlessly as a genocidal plot unfolds before your eyes? Being told to pack your bags, go home, and let hundreds of thousands of people die. Of course, the UNAMIR force was greatly reduced from 2,165 troops to a mere 270. The UN turned a blind eye to these atrocities and refused to protect innocent civilians or keep the peace in Rwanda. But why was the UN so seemingly determined to abandon Rwanda? Well, it might have to do with a little something known as preferential treatment. Basically,
There we go. Yeah, we're going to talk about this part. Well, obviously, there are certain countries that get a much higher status than everybody else in the UN. That's for sure. I mean, that's literally a fact.
Countries' spheres of influence are more important than others is. In the case of the Rwandan genocide, it's both ironic and poetic that Belgium, of all countries, pushed for the withdrawal of the UN forces. On one hand,
we got to stop letting Belgium have any sort of opinion about Africa. Their past history and what they've done in Africa, specifically the Congo, the Belgians should never be able to make a decision about Africa ever again. Can we all agree on that? UN, can we hold a vote? How about that? Let's do a resolution.
The UNAMIR personnel, and on the other hand, Belgian imperialism in Rwanda is what exacerbated the ethnic division between the Hutu and the Tutsi people.
that is, well, there you go. There you go. It gets, yeah.
And another culprit to point your fingers towards is the USA. It turns out that following the Black Hawk Down incident in Somalia in 1993, the
1993. I thought it was 4, but yes. The movie came out in like the 2000s.
Administration lost all will and interest in involving itself with humanitarian missions in Africa. To be fair,
yeah, the 90s is a very interesting time for America because the Cold War was over and the U.S. was looking around like, now what? Like, what do we do now? We defeated the big bad communist Soviets and the communist world almost entirely. So what are we going to do? And they kind of just like twiddled their thumbs a little bit. They were like, how about Yugoslavia? They're communists. They're going down. Let's make things worse there. And then they just kind of got confused until they eventually ended up invading Afghanistan and Iraq. And that was a genius idea, was it not?
If I was running the most advanced military in the world and got my ass handed back to me by a bunch of guys in rags wielding AKs and wooden boats only afloat with the power of friendship, I would too. This hypothesis that UN missions...
You'd be not surprised at how oftentimes farmers have ended up beating the UN. Sorry, not the UN, America in this instance. I don't know about a whole lot of others, but I'm just thinking of Vietnam basically right now, the Vietnam War.
Only follow America's lead didn't come out of nowhere. The USA is the single largest financial contributor to the UN's regular and peacekeeping budget, giving it immense leverage.
Surprise, surprise. Surprise, surprise. It comes down to money. Obviously, yeah, if you're giving... It's just, you know, who's paying them? Who is paying them? That's pretty much every organization and every person individually. Like, it all comes down to who is giving me money. If I'm a news corporation and there's this new report that this medical procedure or this piece of medicine is actually quite dangerous for you, but that, you know, that medical company is paying me money to run the commercials, well, of course I'm not going to report on it. I mean, they're the ones paying me money. I'm not going to report on this factual information. Nah, I'll let somebody else do that. Keep paying me. Keep paying me.
Not only that, but the US also has veto power, and ever since the fall of the Soviet Union, the US has been an undisputed veto champion. This gives Washington...
Yeah, the UN, remember there's like a crazy breakdown to the UN, the veto powers, and then there's like a random sway of countries. It's like a rotating. It's messy. This is specifically, I feel like we're really talking about the boots on the ground part of the UN. I did cover in a video maybe like 2 months ago, the actual like breakdown of how the UN works and things like that, the voting and stuff like that. That's there's lots to criticize about this organization, that's for sure.
A de facto power to greenlight or kill any major peacekeeping operation, making it seem like the UN is nothing more than a tool of American foreign policy. This kind of preferential treatment isn't reserved...
And obviously there's a lot of nations like China, like India, like Russia. There's a lot of... Well, basically, the anti-U.S. coalition that's beginning to form all around the world is very not okay with that, you know, obviously. So there's a big push to stop that.
Just between UN member states, but also inside the peacekeeping operations themselves, with many accusations of nepotism and favoritism floating around. Take, for instance...
Is that even an opinion at this point? Is that even controversial? I think we can all agree that is definitely what's happening.
Since UNAMID, UN's peacekeeping mission in the war-torn Darfur region of Sudan. This UN mission is another instance of an affected region left in a limbo state, especially now with the Sudan civil war unfolding. An insignificant little regional war that has been going on since 2023 with just 500,000 dead. No biggie. But I digress.
I'm glad that we're bringing this up because when it comes to world events, no one brings this up. And I think that a lot of people should. There's a whole lot of people that talk about, you know, I don't know, fixing parts of the world, but they have no idea what's happening in Sudan.
Back in 2017, West Darfur residents accused UNA MID of favoritism amongst their own staff, opting to Nepo hire themselves and their relatives instead of recruiting the local populace. However, this is just the tip of the iceberg in regards to UN scandals. Sadly, the UN has a terrible track record when it comes to monitoring their peacekeeping personnel, who use this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, are they gonna... I don't know how you fix... I mean, the individuals... Oh, man, here we go. Let's just talk about this.
It's a noble pretext and diplomatic immunity to take part in shady networks of illegal smuggling, human trafficking, and...
Oh, yeah. There's a ton of corruption, and I don't really know how they're supposed to root that stuff out, but they probably should if they're supposed to be peacekeepers, if you want to keep the peace and you want to keep people on your side.
Sexual exploitation. Back in 2021, it was revealed that Portuguese UN peacekeepers, part of the MINUSCA mission in the Central African Republic, were accused of and investigated for using military planes to smuggle gold, diamonds, and drugs out
Portugal's Balkan. What else can you say, right? I don't know.
Of the country and into Europe. But this goes beyond just some people trying to make a buck illegal. The involvement of UN peacekeepers in sexual exploitation and human trafficking is a well-documented and devastating problem that further undermines the very...
It's been out for a while. This should not be new news.
Purpose of their missions. Imagine, if you will, you're an innocent bystander of a country in the middle of a civil war. You're excited to see the UN peacekeepers arrive to help you stop the senseless fighting and rebuild your country, only to be exploited and abused by the very people that were supposed to protect you. This is the...
And people wonder why there's such a huge, like across the internet, there's such a negative overall view of the blue helmets and, you know, all this stuff. I remember hearing... You know, again, I'm not as old as I'm old probably to a lot of people that are watching this, but I remember hearing about controversial UN things and the helmets back in like 2012, 13, and at that time I was still pretty young, pretty naive, and I was just like, wait, what? What that happens? Obviously, I'm an American, so that's also going to be a factor that they're going to shield a lot more information from me than they would, well, a Serbian or anyone from the Balkans. But I remember that being like one of the first times, like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that the UN sounds good, but they have got a lot of controversies.
The ugly truth about disgusting people enrolling themselves as peacekeepers in order to abuse and exploit innocent people. And it's an ongoing issue which further damages the credibility of the UN peacekeeping missions in place like Haiti and Sudan. Peacekeepers have been accused of preying on the vulnerable women and children, offering them small amounts of money, food, or goods in exchange for sex. This transactional sex is a form of exploitation that takes advantage of the dire poverty and chaos of conflict zones. But worse and more ridiculous, investigations in countries like Bosnia have exposed peacekeepers as customers in organized sex trafficking rings, pretty much becoming part of the very criminal networks they were sent to combat. But no need to worry, the UN has taken this very seriously and vowed to resolve the problem by making...
It's getting messy out here. Yeah, they're probably just like, there's nothing to see here. Don't look too deeply at all these things, all the fires that are happening behind me.
A cartoon saying rape is bad.
Why do you want to join the army, son?
Oh my goodness.
Why do you want to join the army, son? To murder and pillage. And of course, rape, sir. And why do you want to join the army, son? To keep the peace, protect all women and children, sir. Arrest these criminals, soldier. A uniform does not give you a license to rape.
They've also made a new...
Bro! They made that? They made that video? That's pretty crazy. It does remind me of a theory that, I mean, this is not. It's just like, you know, you think we make so much progress as human beings, and yet, or you see a video like that, and it's like, well, we really haven't. I mean, there's big claims and theories that so many people joined the military because, you know, historically speaking, because this is what you'd be able to do. This was one of the benefits. Not only can you plunder, take resources, but you're also going to do this. You're also going to do some pretty horrific things to the population they're taking over. And that has been theorized for quite some time. There's probably some truth to it all around the world in all aspects of history, every aspect of history. But again, to see that it's still prevalent, at least here, but let's be honest, when I say here, I mean in the UN, but let's be honest, it's probably happening everywhere still.
Numerous other cartoons to solve very serious world issues, because of which our planet is a much safer place for all of humanity. Hell, they've even solved public defecation in India with one single music video. $67.5 billion budget.
Jeez.
So, to recap, the UN isn't taking
Uninvolved in peace. That is so funny. Wait, is this a real image? I bet you that is.
their job as peacekeepers quite seriously. The UN peacekeeping missions have an abysmal reputation and terrible track record due to their over-reliance on American interests.
Bro, like I said, you can find this general sentiment about the UN all over all social media sites, all over the world. Yeah, I mean, if you ask, especially the older generation, I think they're going to get it. If you're young enough, you still might be naive. You still might not, just fully understand the situation. But for sure, I know, like, my grandparents would for sure not have the greatest things to say about the UN. And I think a lot of young people are able to see it from social media, the general sentiment that people just do not like the United Nations.
A bunch of scandals of various magnitude, as well as them adopting useless resolutions that put a band-aid over deeper wounds and hope that they'll heal themselves eventually.
It also gives the U.S. The U.S. doesn't need any help making their whole PR situation even worse. The U.S. does a fantastic job of making the rest of the world really despise us, and the UN is just contributing even more to that. I don't think that I don't think we need the UN's help to make us look worse. But yeah, UN ceasefire. I mean, everyone always brings up the food UN votes, making food a human right. To be fair, the American argument, I guess, I haven't looked too deeply into it, is that, well, it would be the Americans that would have to make the food and do all the things to make food a human right to all around the world. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that would be like, okay, go ahead, yeah, do it then. If I'm like from Europe, like, okay, yeah, just make the food. But that's the only argument that I've seen against that. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's the memes everywhere where it's like, it's just the U.S. and I think Israel that said no, that food should not be a human right.
It's no wonder that recently some of the biggest players worldwide have started to call the UN's bluff and abuse their status as large military powers.
We have, well, obviously, I thought we all knew that, actually. So we have Russia, the UK, France, the USA, and China. So a lot of the times Russia and China team up, but it doesn't matter because the US, France, and Germany have the 3-5 advantage. So they have 3 out of the 5 here.
We're well into the 4th year of the Ukraine-Russian war, the one that Putin claimed would be over in 2 weeks. And since then...
What has the UN done about Myanmar? I mean, Myanmar has been on like a crazy civil war since, is that 2021? I mean, I remember that girl doing the TikTok dance right in front of the coup. That was crazy.
The battlefield lines are frozen over, and the quote-unquote unyielding Western support is beginning to show its cracks. In fact, one might say that the global support from UN member states has been quite superficial, with many countries refusing to isolate themselves from the Russian energy grid.
Oh, yeah. If you're referring to this, I feel like, there's theories that the U.S., I feel like it was kind of a toss-up in the very beginning with when Trump came into office, if he was actually going to defend Ukraine. It looks like now, certainly, that is the case. I think continuing to defend Ukraine, NATO, the West is all pretty united still in that effort. But when it comes to still taking resources out of Russia, I mean, I feel like for like Germany, for instance, they don't really have a choice. I mean, Germany kind of screwed themselves. Germany, you played yourself because they got rid of all their nuclear and they decided to rely 100% on, or not 100%, but a lot on Russian energy, and look where that got them. So in this case, I feel like, well, what else is Germany really going to do? I don't know what Germany's supposed to do here.
Due to their reliance on Russia's vast natural resources. When it comes to human rights monitoring, the UN has not been able to send any peacekeepers due to Russia's veto power, which I can't believe it still has to this
Mordor vetoes Gondor sending aid. That's hilarious. Well, I guess you can't do it.
day. And other humanitarian aid agencies have provided support when necessary, but couldn't do anything about Russia's non-discriminate bombardments or the destruction of cities like Mariupol. And then you have the Israel-Gaza war.
Yeah.
Where nearly 2 years after it started...
I think, to be honest, this is the big thing that really turned the vast majority of the... I mean, first of all, it's always been there. The criticism of UN has always been all over the internet, whether it be, honestly, X/Twitter or Reddit. You know, you kind of have two sides of the, two very different sides of social media. You know, you got Reddit, which is extremely left-wing in my opinion, and then X, which has kind of become more right. So, but they generally agree, I feel like, on this topic that the UN is a mess.
Tens of thousands of Palestinians were killed, entire cities were razed to the ground, and Benjamin Netanyahu keeps breaching UN protocol by firing at journalists, humanitarian aid workers,
and the UN is not going to do anything.
Supply chains directed to the innocent civilians caught in the crossfire. And the UN's response has been even worse than lackluster. Benny...
The UN just wants... The UN is going to side with whoever's got more money. I mean, if that's... I thought we came to that conclusion already, but they're just gonna like, give me the bag, and then we'll be whatever side you need us to be on.
If you don't stop bombarding hospitals and kindergartens, you'll have to face our ultimate...
Yeah, they will not do anything more than the words there. That's an absolute guarantee. They're not going to do anything against Israel. That's like 100%.
An ICC arrest warrant. What are we gonna do about it now, buddy? Yeah, that arrest warrant means nothing if the member states simply refuse to arrest him.
Hungary literally quit the ICC to do this stunt. Wow, interesting, Hungary.
Rólad beszélek, Magyarország. Legalább itt sincs LGBT pride.
We don't talk about LGBT pride on our streets, only war criminals.
Köszönöm, Orbán bácsi.
Thank you, Mr.
Magyarországot szolgáljuk. The UN can try as it might to come up with statements, condemnations, and sanctions.
They will literally stand. They are literally stand in the room talking to their favorite. Well, in this case, he's talking to Eminem. Bibi is the rapper Eminem.
Will simply crash into the Israel wall of apathy.
Can you imagine how hard it is to stop Ronaldo from scoring
and financial stability, courtesy of their generous benefactor, the US of A. The bottom line is, Russia and
only people in the military reserve will be drafted.
Israel have been overriding this rulebook of diplomacy, and the UN are struggling to find a way to respond accordingly. But what about the USA's view on these matters? Since America's interests, for lack of a better word, trump above the general UN consensus.
It's so funny how often you do have to actually use that word. Trump is, the president, but I mean like the word Trump being the, something that trumps over something else.
The USA's stance regarding diplomatic and external affairs under Trump's administration are all over the place. But what is consistent is that he'll gladly undermine future UN resolutions that they deem unsatisfactory. That and funneling billions and trillions of dollars to Israel.
Well, there's no easy way to say this, but somehow Thanos returned. He's going to destroy our universe.
We need to give Israel
the Avengers are gone, sir. What do we do? Don't worry, I'm going to give $5 billion to Israel.
But who would have thought we would get to see Trump rolling down the red carpet for Putin on American soil? Who would have thought?
He didn't show the part before this, but yeah, there was a pretty crazy moment. I think it was like literally right before this where they're standing up on this stage and then like 5, I don't know if they're B-2 bombers. I don't know what kind of stealth bombers they were, but they just flew like right above Putin. That was just wild. That was absolutely insane. That felt to me like Trump was like, hey, we could take us both out right now. That felt like kind of a massive flex. I wish there was a bigger word than flex, but it felt like a big FU to me in that moment. I can't find the clip. It's something just like fighter jets flying over them. Yeah.
Soil. Who would have thought that
UN vetoes to condemn Russia. Oh, well, yeah.
We would get to witness the USA vote against the condemnation of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Not even a fence-sitting abstinence. Oh, and you also have Viktor Orban, Trump's and Putin's.
I think that there's probably a lot of different methods, more than likely, that he's trying to employ here to find a way to get a peace deal. And obviously nothing's worked. But maybe at this moment, they were thinking, well, how about if we vote against this condemnation, then maybe Putin will work. And clearly that is not how it worked out. Sounds kind of like some Chamberlain tactics, if you ask me. Sounds like some Chamberlain tactics from World War II, to be honest.
Strongest dick rider, rubbing himself silly at the idea of voting side by side with his idols, despite being an overwhelming minority. So it should be no surprise that Trump actively endorses and encourages this kind of geopolitical bully behavior to the UN's detriment, coming from the man that keeps boasting about his good relationship with a North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. If this
Well, again, I talked about this earlier in another video, but apparently there's all these reports that are like he sent like a team to do something in North Korea in 2019, and it ended disastrously. But something like SEAL Team 6 was sent into North Korea, and they didn't really even get off the ship, apparently. But they were going to try some messy things inside of North Korea. And it's weird because, yeah, he does refer to Kim Jong-un as his friend. But in reality, I don't know what's going on under the surface. I don't know if he's trying to take him out or what.
Became the norm, he would find it easier to achieve his wet dream of assimilating Canada as the 51st state of America, or colonizing Denmark, or the Gaza resort, or whatever.
That was crazy when he said that. That was crazy.
These recent developments have put the UN's position as peacekeeper and negotiator into jeopardy, and some analysts think they will usher in a new age of strong arming geopolitics.
The red hats.
Which is actually the same kind of geopolitics, but without the PR talk about unity and freedom and whatnot. So the UN peacekeepers and the UN itself as a whole had their reputations down in the gutter for decades. And if things continue as they are, we might remember the UN just like we remember the League of Nations.
Oh, there we go. We're finally going to talk about it. Yeah, you got to mention the League of Nations. It feels like, here, I'll finish the video, but honestly, it kind of feels like no matter whatever world organization we try to pool 192 countries in the world together, I think we're at 192, it's just not going to work out. It's just going to probably be embarrassing. And it's just going to be a symbol, I guess. That's the best we can hope for. A symbol of unity when we all know that's just not the case.
Which is a shame, really, because as much as I've dunked on them,
UN peacekeepers operate in some of the most difficult places in the world, risking their lives.
Peacekeepers are the best option we've got right now. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not like other countries have a better track record in regards to officiating and maintaining peace. Look at Russia, for example, and the disastrous handling of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. To be fair, it's hard to blame the UN as the sole scapegoat for the mishandling of conflicts worldwide. International courts of justice are just as useless as the UN when it comes to denouncing and persecuting war criminals and totalitarian dictators beyond metaphorical slaps on the wrist. I mean,
yeah, I don't know what the UN is really supposed to do. I think it's important that we all come to realize the UN's shortcomings and that it is a very, 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 very flawed organization. I think that's very important for the world to know. But what other option do we got? I guess we could throw it away, but dang, you give them less money, you can try to defund them. I mean, the U.S. is going to have to do that, which you never know. We're trying to save a buck or two, so maybe we will. Maybe we will.
Shit, not a single American has been prosecuted by the ICC nor American war crimes investigated, despite them occurring in the numerous Middle Eastern wars the country was involved in. Simply put, we collectively have weak mechanisms to keep them in check. Ideally, in a perfect utopic world, we wouldn't have greedy, bloodthirsty imperialist warmongers that only care about expanding their imaginary lines on a map. Nor should we have weak-willed countries that claim solidarity against evil empires, yet choose to...
I'm sorry, but it doesn't matter how much you hope, or how much you think progress we're going to make. We're always going to have warmongers. That's just a fact of reality. Like, it does not matter. I can almost guarantee you we've always had them. We've had them in every century, every decade of world history. We are going to continue to have warmongers. That is never going to go away. In fact, I predict very oftentimes it's going to get worse. It is literally only going to get worse as we continue to move away from a global system. The conflicts that are happening more and more around the world are only going to increase, and we're going to see them kind of ramp up again since the U.S. is no longer just the singular dominant force. We have different spheres of influence, and people are going to be messing around in those spheres of influence. So yeah, warmongers will literally never go away.
To cooperate with them anyway once their pockets start to get thinner. But that's just blind idealism and wishful thinking at this point. I don't know.
Yeah.
Make a new UN with blackjack and hookers.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was trying to say. Like, what are we gonna do? Yeah, what are we gonna do? I mean, let's just tell everyone, hey, this organization sucks, but what are you gonna do? I mean, we could try to reform it. We could throw it away. I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, and all these comments basically just prove the point here that we all generally know that it's a complete mess. Yeah, so that's good that we're figuring that out. There's no like opportunity. There's nothing being suggested like how to fix it, but yeah. I like this comment though. I feel like the UN is the embodiment of fake American optimism. It just feels fake and acts like everything will be all right without doing much. Damn. Really loved the meme references to go inside all his points in that video. Living ironically in Europe. Definitely go check him out. Big thanks to my patrons this month. If you want your name here, check that Patreon link in the description down below. Never change Drew unless you want to. We need a Drew bobblehead figurine. Petition for Drew
Alexander
to make
the Terrible,
ASMR
Connor
Tingles
Pavlik,
version 2.
Frederick Tiblin,
King Bear Hayes,
Lord Track,
Luxembourg Lover,
Miglu the Goat,
Nolan, Nord Tyrol,
Tambrin,
and William.